Hey, it's your real estate geek Andrew Finney here with real estate trends for August 8th, 2017. Today we're taking a look at buying a flipped house and 6 smart questions to ask first. So recently Stephanie Booth had posted an article on Realtor.com titled Buying a Flipped House, Ask These 6 Questions First. And this makes a lot of sense, especially in today's market where you do see a lot of people out there that are attempting to flip property. And there's definitely some good flippers out there and some not so good flippers out there. So asking these 6 questions first are going to protect your bottom line and make sure you're getting a great deal on that flipped house. Because here's an interesting stat before we get into those questions. And according to Realty Track, the average flipped home in the United States is bought for around $129,000 and flipped out for $190,000. So if they're doing that at a $129,000 purchase price, what exactly are they doing to that property beyond cosmetics? That's what you need to know. And even if it is cosmetics, what did they do whenever they found it? As somebody that owns a home and massively renovates the homes that I buy, I can normally tell you that every house has something going on. It could be a plumbing, it could be an electrical issue, it could be a lot of different issues. It could be something with a landscaping, sprinkler irrigation system. There's a lot of stuff to know. So let's take what smart question number 1 is. Smart question number 1 is to ask who is the seller. And you're saying, who cares about that, right? Well, have you considered there's a difference between somebody like you and I that might buy a home and get into flipping, and there's also a difference if somebody is setting up an LLC, which is an acronym for Limited Liability Corporation. If it's a limited liability corporation, you want to know how long they've been in business and actually check that information, because what happens with some people out there, they'll use that LLC in a very nasty, unscrupulous way. How so, you might be asking? Well, that's a great question. The way that they would do that is they might set up an LLC for a specific flipped property. LLCs don't cost very much to set up, believe it or not. So if they set it up for a specific property, they sell that property, they buy it, they flip it, and then they sell it to you. Think what happens. They might decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to liquidate the LLC and go form a new LLC so that if anything happens with that property, the LLC can't be sued because it doesn't exist. So you want to look for a track record if it is a limited liability corporation that in fact owns that property you're looking at right now. Make sure they have a track record, because if they've been in business for a few years, then they probably are intending to stick around. If it's a fly-by-night, then just know before you go, because it could you could end up owing a lot of money fixing that new home, and we don't want that to happen, so let's protect you there. So smart question number 2 is, what was the scope of the renovation? Different renovations, different properties, different things that need to be done. So look, you buy a flipped home, you buy a foreclosed home, you buy a short sold home, you might buy a torn down traditional home, and you might just need to do cosmetic stuff to it. Maybe you just are putting in granite and floors and fresh paint and flipping it out. Or perhaps it needs a lot more work and it was just too savory and juicy of a deal for the investor or the flipper that bought that property, and they said, oh, I'm gonna get this wonderful home, and even though the average home is bought at $129,000, I can get this one for $70,000, and I think I can make $240,000. Well, be careful. Because if that's the case, there's a reason it was $70,000 if it was $240,000 in a fair market. And there might be structural issues to it. There might be mold. There might be a lot of different things with that house that you need a home inspector to go out and take a look at. So be mindful of what the scope of the renovations were, because that brings us actually to smart question number 3, which was, were permits issued or needed for the renovations? Because if there's electrical, plumbing, HVAC, different things like that need to be replaced, there may be permits that need to be pulled from the city and approved. And unfortunately, with today's day and age, there's so much information readily available online that a lot of municipalities might let you actually check it. So scour and Google it out and see if that home that you want, that's that flipped home, see if there were any permits pulled. Call the city, talk to your agent. I mean, your agent's going to be happy to make these calls for you. Your buyer's agent, your local real estate consultant is your best ally. Use them. Tell them, hey, I want to know about this, this, and this, and let them know. Specifically, you want to know whether there were permits issued on that property for that renovation, and if there were, get a copy of it so that you can maintain a file for your home. It's always smart to maintain a file on any home that you own about all the maintenance that was ever done to that property, showing that what was done, if permits were needed, when it was done, what was paid for. And if you keep that in a nice little binder, it'll make it a lot easier whenever it's your turn to sell that property. So smart question number 4 is who owned the house previously. Now you're probably wondering, what the heck does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Well, if you're talking about the price of tea in China, that would depend on whether you're exporting it or importing it. Now, wouldn't it? So a little bit of a joke there. So bringing it back to why is that important? Because again, with all the information out there and all the information that your local real estate consultant is going to have that's representing your best interest, they can actually pull up the history and see if they can find who the previous owner was, and they may write them a letter, send them an email, make a phone call, what have you, and asking them, hey, was this always a 4-bedroom home, or was a room added? Was there a structural change to it? The previous owner might know. So if they know that, then that can also let you know what that flipper did, whether or not they're saying it, how they bought that house and the condition that they bought it in. But if it was, let's say it was a 4-bedroom and then it turns into a 3-bedroom home, they blew out a wall. Now, was that wall a load-bearing wall? If it was a load-bearing wall, that's going to be a structural issue that can cost you a huge amount of money and really cause some massive issues at that home. If you're in a earthquake-prone area or a tornado-prone area or something like that, it'll degrade the structural integrity, and we don't want the home collapsing on you. Because yes, these things can happen, and that's why I make these videos to help you ask these questions of your local buyer agent and put them to work in your best interest, and put them to work in making sure that you're going to be safe in that new flipped home. So smart question number 5. This is a really interesting one. How long was a home vacant? If that home that is being flipped is vacant for, let's say, a period of years, that could be a problem. Like, for example, I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. If there's a home that's vacant in Las Vegas, Nevada, we're gonna have a lot of problems because we have very hot summers and we have some cooler winters. It doesn't snow, so if you're watching this and you're on the East Coast, you're probably laughing at me a little bit because you're thinking cold. It ain't cold until it's like negative 32 outside. Well, cold to us might be like 28 in the winter. But that being said, is even at 28 degrees to the high in the summer of like 116, sometimes a really hot summer could be 120 degrees. That's going to wreak havoc on that home. You're going to have all kinds of materials within that property, especially like plumbing and electrical, that's going to be expanding and contracting. And if there's any water in those pipes, it's going to freeze, and then it's going to thaw, and then it's going to freeze, and then it's going to thaw. The house can't breathe, it's locked up. It becomes a very dangerous proposition as far as what could possibly happen to that home over that time. Not to mention, seals are going to be broken. There's going to be a lot of stuff that goes in the disrepair. From a vacant home, it could have been burglarized, it could have been squatted, you could have had a squatter in there. There's a lot of different things that you should know. So asking how long the home has been vacant is a smart question as well. So that brings us into your smart question number 6. Go outside and take a look. Take a look at that outside landscaping. See if there's a sprinkler system. If there was fresh rock installed. I mean, in Las Vegas, obviously, we're a desert climate. So what's called xeriscape, or essentially a desert landscaping, is done a lot. And there's some problems whenever I've seen some people go in and just throw down some rock. The rock's not very expensive, but for some reason, not everybody puts down a liner underneath that rock, which means you're gonna have weeds that come up and you're gonna have issues because they didn't put down a liner underneath that rock to keep the weeds and grass down that they just covered up. That's a problem. Another problem is maybe they didn't install the correct irrigation system or any irrigation system at all. That could cost you several $1,000s to get done. So these are things that you need to ask and be aware of with those flipped homes. If you have any comments or questions, or you've had a bad experience with a flipped property or a great experience with a flipped property, tell me what you're thinking and what your experiences are in the comment section below, along with any tips you have for our community out there that's looking for buying a flipped home. This has been Andrew Finney with your Real Estate Trends for today. If you like this video, please give me those thumbs up and subscribe now. And before we go, I'm going to leave you with one final tip. Always, always, always hire a licensed home inspector, because they're not going to be fooled by the glitz and glamour of that flipped home. They're going to be looking for that rotting wood. Enjoy a great day.